I've been involved with video for about 20 years now. And when the DSLR revolution hit, I, like many people who were involved in video and cinematography, started to dip my toes into photography. Why not? The camera does both, right? But at the time, there wasn't a whole lot of videos, from photographers who did both, kind of introducing video people to still frames. And I would have found that very helpful. So today, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to flip that around, and I'm going to give you guys an idea of what it's like to come into video with a background in photography. Number one, you already know a lot. You already understand shot composition, the principles of lighting. You're probably really good at organizing gigabytes, even terabytes worth of data with your various drives, and kind of probably already have the hardware for it as well in terms of your computer. You understand color correction and color grading. Now we just got to get you familiar with a couple extra things and you're just about there. Number two, most editors are not very good with audio. And these days you actually don't need to be. Sure, you're going to learn about as much as you possibly can to, really fine tune and get your audio as pristine as you possibly can. But these days technology is advanced to the point where a lot of this stuff is automated. In Premiere Pro, for example, we now have what I affectionately call the idiot panel, which is kind of like the Lightroom color correction panel and a top-down workflow that'll allow you to tweak your audio, apply EQ, noise reduction. These types of things are all very automated. If you can move a couple sliders, you can learn audio in a relatively short period of time. Number three, if you're a photographer who's been processing your images in Adobe's Photoshop, once you start playing around with Premiere and After Effects, you might notice some glaring flaws with Photoshop when you start to see how Adobe does things with After Effects and Premiere. When you learn that adjustment layers in Premiere and After Effects are effectively blank layers that you can apply as many effects as you'd like to, you might start scratching your head as to why Photoshop allows for 10 or 15 different adjustment layers, but they're all specific for curves and levels and so on. When you learn that in Premiere and in After Effects, you can apply effects to individual layers, as many as you'd like, and you have the ability to go back in there and reopen them at any time and edit them, you may start to view smart objects in Photoshop as more of a workaround than an actual feature to tout. Color correction and color grading are easily my favorite part of the post-production pipeline. And when you learn about the scopes that video editors have been enjoying for years, like the RGB parade, vector scope, you are going to wonder why the Photoshop is still rocking a histogram. Now, I don't mean to be hating on Photoshop. This is more of a frustration with Adobe, and they're just stalling on taking these features from After Effects and Premiere and bringing them over into Photoshop. And I have to give them credit where credit's due. They did recently do this with Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom, where they brought in the color grading panel that now has color wheels. Color wheels are great. They allow you to adjust, shadows, midtones, and highlights independently. That was a nice upgrade. I think if the scopes would eventually come over, that would be very much appreciated. Photographers, trust me, when you start learning about these new video scopes in the video editing apps, what photographer wouldn't want to have those? Come on. Number four, you may or may not need a new computer, or at least a computer upgrade. Consumer cameras these days shoot Ultra HD, they shoot 4K. In the prosumer level, you've got cameras that shoot 6 and 8K. If you don't think that your computer can handle that kind of number crunching, Premiere in particular has a workflow for you. It's called a Proxy Workflow. And basically what that does is it takes all of the footage that you shot and it creates low resolution copies in an editing codec, more on that later, that will allow you to quickly go through your timeline, put together your edit, and then when you export, Premiere's smart enough to ignore the proxies and reference your original high resolution files and create your movie based on those. Number five. I'm talking about Premiere because, again, we do have a lot of photographers who are Photoshop editors, and so it kind of makes sense to use Adobe's products because the UIs will look relatively familiar to you. A lot of the same tools, but you don't need it. And there are free NLEs out there. NLE, by the way, stands for Nonlinear Editor. It's referring to video editing programs. There is Blackmagic's DaVinci Resolve, which is a very popular choice. It's kind of an all-in-one app that allows you to do video editing. It was originally dreamt up as a color grading app, which of course it can still do, but they have a free version. It's pretty close to the paid version in terms of specs. It's not like you're getting 50% of the program for free. You're getting like 95% of the program. Full version, by the way, is only in the ballpark of $300, if I remember correctly. All right, guys, let's hop into Premiere. I just want to give you guys a really quick brief overview of how NLEs work so that you're less intimidated when you cut your first video. Okay, so this is the inside of Adobe Premiere Pro 2020. I'm going to show you around the panels, how things are laid out, and how basically things work. But before I do, I need to show you something very important. And if you're a photographer who is using Photoshop, If you're editing an actual photograph inside of Photoshop, that photo is contained within the Photoshop document. That's not how NLEs work. Video editing programs don't actually edit your videos. They reference them. Let me show you what I mean. I'm gonna go ahead and minimize Premiere Pro for a minute, and I'm just gonna show you my folder structure. So I'm gonna come over here to my PC, or this PC, show you my drives. I have this 1 terabyte M.2 drive. I'm gonna open it up. And then I'm going to show you a folder that I created. My daughter's birthday was yesterday, and I filmed it. I'm putting together a video for her. So I created a folder on one of my very fast SSDs. I called it Chloe's 11th birthday. And in this, I have everything from footage, music that I downloaded, and I intend on putting in the project. I got footage from various cameras, so I also have the Osmo Action on here. I've got some folders for transcoded files. More on that in a moment. Let me show you around some of the components of the video editing app now. You have a monitor, of course, so you can see what is going to be your final movie. In Premiere Pro, this is simply called the monitor. We've got some scopes, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. This has to do with color correction and color grading. We've got our audio mixer for our various audio tracks down here. And then we've got the timeline. And the timeline is basically where you're going to construct a set of instructions for Adobe Premiere Pro. And that's what I mean. I'm going to show you something that's a little bit confusing. This is your media bin, okay? You can have multiple folders within your media bins. You can see I have one here for sound effects, and I also have another for overlays. But here's the terminology that throws a lot of people off, and I just want to clear up some confusion here. If I come up here to File, in most NLEs, under File, you're going to see an option for Import. The implication of that word means I'm going to bring video files into Adobe Premiere Pro. These are not really here. When you go to File, Import, what you're doing is you're establishing a connection. You're telling Premiere where on your computer are these files actually located. So basically what you're doing is you're telling Premiere, it's on my M.2 drive under the Chloe's 11th birthday folder under my footage folders. That's where they're at. And then Adobe Premiere Pro establishes that connection and then allows you to take these various video clips that are, again, connected with that other folder and lay out a set of instructions. And what are you creating a set of instructions for? What you're doing is you're creating a set of instructions to tell Adobe Premiere how to write a different video file. Okay, that different video file that you ultimately end up writing is your movie. Okay, but understand that if I come in here, and I've got some effects thrown on, let's see, this little glitch effect right here, you guys can see that? This is not applied to these clips. So if I were to take this clip, open it up over here in Windows Explorer, it would not be affected by any effects that I've applied to it in Premiere Pro. So let's say I were to take this clip right here of me talking, and I was to make this black and white, okay? And then I were to come back to Windows Explorer, locate that same video file and play it, it would not be in black and white. Okay, remember, the timeline is nothing more than a set of instructions for how to create your movie. So it's also worth mentioning that because when you import your video, you're establishing a connection, you're basically pointing Premiere Pro to the folders in which your footage resides. So what happens if I then take this folder, this GH5 folder. So I've got footage from my GH5, I've got footage from an Osmo Action. Let's say I take this GH5 folder, I cut it, I move it from here to another drive, and then I open up this exact same project in Premiere Pro. It's going to show me a bunch of media offline, meaning it's saying, I don't see where you originally told me this footage was. It's gone now. So when it comes to video editing, the Premiere Pro project file is actually really small. They can be kilobytes small, because there's nothing really in them. It's really just referencing these other folders. Now, the types of things that are inside of the Premiere Pro file would be if I were to create a text layer. Okay, so if I were to come over here and just start typing, text up here, that would be contained within the Premiere Pro file. That wouldn't go anywhere. Okay, so let me just show you a basic layout. You're always going to have a program monitor, someplace where you can view what's going on your timeline. So if I were to hit the play button,
workstation
the movie
of 8
would play up here. You're also going to have video scopes, and video scopes are pretty cool. I mentioned them at the beginning of the video. Let me just give you a brief overview of a couple of these right here. This is called the RGB parade. This is representing contrast and exposure among the 3 color channels. And the way that all of this works, this scribbly stuff in here is called trace. And when you look at an RGB parade or a waveform, in fact, let me show you a waveform here. waveform, from left to right, this is your image. Okay, what I mean, we're talking about exposure and how bright things are. So if you look here in the red, how this red is up here nice and high, this trace, that's me in the middle of the frame. If you guys can see that. Down here, things are not quite as bright, so you can see the trace is lower over here on the waveform. Same is true with the RGB. That's how that's going to work as well. We have here an audio mixer. This is not 100% necessary for cutting together audio on your in your project, but this is a little bit more advanced, learning some of the features and stuff that are on here, but it's, again, not necessary. I just have it open because it's there. Okay, down here, you're going to have your media bin. So this is where you are going to establish a connection, again, import, but with your various types of media. So in the main bin, I usually have video footage, and then I usually create different bins for sound effects, music. Overlays would just be any type of media that I plan on throwing over on top of my footage. So right here, I've got some lens flare assets, right, that I could drag out, put on top of a video. Over here, you've got your effects controls. And so if I go to opacity, I can actually change the blending mode of that particular overlay. And that will allow this to be visible. All right. Over here, again, if you are an Adobe Photoshop user coming into video, this will look very familiar to you. Adobe added this a couple of years ago. They call it the Lumetri color panel. And this basically just looks like Lightroom and Adobe Camera Raw, right? We got the temperature and tint up top. We got exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, saturation. And of course, a lot of these are going to have to be a little bit more video specific. So we've also got color wheels. We've got HSL secondary. We can also do what it's called color keying, which means I can actually key a specific color within the frame and edit just that color. All NLEs are also going to have a VU monitor, a volume unit monitor, and over here. And this will give you a visual display of the audio that's coming from your video. I had, usually in the videos I've been watching, there's actually a plastic cup. Okay, so the way that this works, in Premiere, by the way, if you select the timeline and you hit the backslash key, it will condense your entire project so it's visible within the frame. Once I'm done with my edit, okay, once you have what's called picture lock. Picture lock is just referring to all of your edits are complete. You're no longer going to be moving anything around, trimming any clips. Trimming a clip, by the way, would mean like this, shortening the duration of the clip. But you're going to export your movie. Again, another confusing term. Export basically means it's going to take your set of instructions and it's going to write a single video file that you provided the instructions for. Okay, so in Premiere, you're just going to hit Control-M. And then this would be an export setting. It'll ask you what type of file you want to make, how high the quality is. You can name your movie, and then you're going to tell it where to go, meaning what folder you're going to put it in. Okay, hit Export. And it will basically take the instructions that you gave it and it'll write a new file for you. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Next week, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into Premiere Pro and NLEs in general, just to give you an idea of some of the features that you can expect to see in any NLE, and also to get comfortable with some of Premiere Pro's features in particular, because again, as part of your Creative Cloud subscription, you have access to a lot of different tools. What's really cool about Adobe Premiere is the way that it can dynamically link with other programs like After Effects and Audition. All right, hope you guys found this little introduction useful. If you haven't already done so, please hit the subscribe button and then tap the notification bell so you won't miss any videos.